Okay, today we are talking about picking a tech stack for your SaaS. Now, this is for people who have already validated their idea. They've done a demo product, maybe in something like Lovable. They have shown it to people and proven that they have this idea that people want and they're willing to pay for. And now it's time to build their MVP, their minimum viable product. Now, I'm going to try and persuade you that your MVP is the time to make the right choice about tech stack. Now, some people will build their MVP on whatever's simple and easy into hand because they just want to get it out quickly. And I think that's a mistake. Take just a quick beat and pick the right tech stack to build the MVP on, because the dirty little secret is that in most cases, your MVP is what you will end up shipping to production. You may polish it a bit, but it will basically be the same code from the MVP that goes into prod. Now, once it's in production, once there's people using it and paying you to use it, changing the tech stack becomes a real giant pain. It's hugely expensive. It takes so much work. You don't want to do that. So pick the right tech stack for the MVP because that's probably what you're going to ship. Now, the question becomes, what is the right tech stack? I'm going to try and sell you on an idea that I call the vanilla stack. You will sell your company one day. That is the fundamental truth, either because you're just ready to do other things and you want the payday, or because it's time to retire. So, assuming your company doesn't tank and go completely bankrupt, you will eventually sell it. And when you come to sell it, you will get the best price for it if you have a boring, basic, vanilla kind of tech stack. Just think it through. If you're the buyer and you show up and you're thinking, hey, I might buy this SaaS product, I might buy this SaaS company, and you're doing due diligence and you ask, hey, what's the tech stack you guys are using? What are you thinking to yourself? You are crossing your fingers that they don't say anything weird and exotic that you will then have to pay to maintain. You want them to say absolutely vanilla, common things. You want it to be garden variety stuff. And in practice, I think what that means is you want it to be Laravel, React, and Postgres. We'll come to why it's all of those things. But you want the tech stack, in short, to be as vanilla as possible. So we're going to approach it in 3 layers. First, the front end. What are you going to choose for the key front end framework, key front end library? There's so many options for front end. There's plenty for back end, but front end is next level. The JavaScript, TypeScript world has so many things to choose from. You've got your big players like React and Vue. You've got some smaller players that still are somewhat popular, Svelte. You've got Alpine that's becoming a bit more popular with the kind of HateOS stuff. But there is a long, long list. I really liked Riot.js back in the day, but the fact that I liked it and thought it was well designed does not mean it was the right choice for a SaaS. The right choice is React. It just is. React wins for one reason, and that is ecosystem. There's so many components out there that you can just pull into your project and use. Easy done, totally free. There are developers everywhere that understand React. It's ubiquitous. We tried setting up Vue at a company I worked at. We liked the look of Vue. We had to go at it, and we quickly realized that there was just heaps more ecosystem and IDE support and all that kind of stuff for React. And so we ditched it and went with React. Learn that lesson. Go with React from the start. The obvious way that this comes out is that when you go onto Claude today and ask it to help you design a user interface element for something, it will build you a React component. Even if you didn't specify that, it will assume that you want it as a React component. React is everywhere. Live with it. Yes, you may have some pet framework that you like better, but the reality is that when you come to sell your SaaS, you'll be better off if you did the front end with React. Do that. Okay, moving on to the back end. Similar kind of issue. What should you go with as the back end? Look, Rails and Django are fine. If you're really into Ruby or really into Python, pick one of those. If you're DHH and you are borderline romantically in love with Ruby, you love it that much, go with Rails. It'll make your developer experience better. You'll be hiring people who think like you do. That's totally fine. If you're even a bit unsure about which of these things to go with as a back-end layer, if you could go Rails, could go to Django, could go Laravel, my advice is go with Laravel. There's a few reasons for this. One big one is that Laravel is PHP, and PHP is a SaaS language. Yes, you can do other things with it. People build CLIs, and they're even finding ways to build native mobile apps now with PHP, but everyone, I think, just understands that is secondary. PHP is fundamentally a language built for making SaaS products. It is like a domain-specific language for SaaS and doing server stuff. PHP is great for exactly this kind of case, and Laravel is the big player in frameworks for PHP. Yeah, so go with Laravel. The other cool thing about it is that it has so many batteries included. I tried to do a backend for a project a while back in Node.js, and I came to this problem that I needed to be able to validate email addresses. So users would put an email address into our system, and I wanted to go like find the DNS records for that email address and check them and make sure it all looked legit, and I probably could send to that email without getting a bounce. And it was really difficult to do. Like I had to string a couple of different packages together. The easiest way to do it seemed to be to pay for this other external API that I was going to have to pay $20 a month for to check email addresses for me. And then I realized Laravel just has this. It's just one of the built-in validators. You put this one line in your request validation, and it will do all the DNS checking of any email addresses submitted. Out of the box, nothing to pay for. That's what the experience of Laravel is like, batteries included. And of course, because it's PHP and people don't respect PHP as much as they should, harsh reality, it's cheap and easy to find developers. And if they're PHP devs, they've probably got experience with Laravel. So that's your backend layer. Finally, your data layer. Now, you do want to pick a relational database. Don't pick a document database. Don't try to go with Mongo or something like that. It's not worth it. Relational databases have the pedigree. They have the proven track record of 30, 40, maybe even 50 years now. It's getting ridiculous. The thing is, the data in your database is an asset. The code on your backend and front end is not an asset. The code is a liability. That is something that you have to pay developers to maintain and to work on and to fix bugs in. That is something that costs you every month, every year. The data in your database is an asset. When someone comes to buy your company, a significant part of what they will be wanting to buy is the data in your database, the list of stuff about your customers and what they've been doing using your software. The data is worth something. And so for that reason, I want to pick something absolutely dependable. I want to protect that data scrupulously because that is actually a big part of where the value in the company is. So pick a relational database. Don't fall for the NoSQL stuff. Pick relational. Of MySQL and Postgres, sure. Like if you've spent years as a MySQL admin and that's where you're comfortable, totally fine choice. If you're even a bit unsure, go with Postgres. A couple of reasons. The philosophy of Postgres is more strict. On the back end, we use dynamic languages, PHP, Python, Ruby. Yes, there are stricter languages like C#. Those are fine. There are advantages to that. But when you want to ship quickly and get features in front of customers, it's kind of an understood conclusion at this point that dynamic languages are faster to get something shipped. Sometimes you'll get a bug that you wouldn't have gotten if you were using a stricter statically typed language. It'll happen. But because this is SaaS, the release cycle is so fast. You find that bug, you realize there was just a small type error. It took you 15 minutes to fix and 5 more minutes to deploy it, and now it's in production. You didn't have to wait for App Store approval. You didn't have to, wait for a fleet of vehicles to come into the workshop so you could install software on them. Nothing like that. You push, it's in the cloud, it's done. So the trade-off is you want dynamic languages, you want rapid deployment on your back end where the code is a liability and you want to be able to fix it quickly. On the data layer, your data is an asset. You want that to be slow moving. You want that to be hard to steer because you want it to be hard to break. The data layer you want to protect vigorously, which means you want Postgres for that strict philosophy. The data types must be accurate. The foreign keys must be maintained. You can wrap a DDL change in a transaction and roll it back if something goes wrong. You want Postgres for all of that. The other reason you want Postgres is because you want to be able to scale vertically for as long as possible. Now remember, vertical scaling is just bigger computers, but one very simple monolithic architecture. You want one big database that you can put on a bigger and bigger computer, and that's how you'll scale until it's absolutely forced on you that you need to scale out to multiple machines and a more complex architecture. Postgres is great because it lets you squeeze the most vertical scale out as possible. It's really good at handling complicated queries, big complex joins, does that really well. You are going to want to do more and more of that over time as you realize that you have all this interesting data in the database. You will want to pull complicated statistics and reports and find trends and patterns in the data, and you want to be able to do that in Postgres. Postgres is also great for concurrency. Because we're trying to scale vertically, we're going to have a lot of users trying to read and write to this one database at the same time, and Postgres is really good at handling that. It's really good at handling, locks in concurrency without locking anything more than it has to lock in order to keep the data absolutely consistent. So that's Postgres. It also has a huge plugin ecosystem. That also plays really nicely into one of our principles. Keep the architecture as simple as possible. Don't add moving parts unless you absolutely have to. The extension ecosystem means that Postgres can do a bunch of things for you so that you don't have to complicate your stack. You don't have to have Redis to do a job queue because you can use a Postgres table. You don't have to have Pinecone in order to have a RAG system for your AI features because you can put PG Vector in and have a vector database inside Postgres. You don't have to have some other separate REST server for certain things. You can even build a REST server into Postgres. You can keep your architecture simple by using Postgres plugins rather than setting up more moving parts of the stack. So there we go. That's the reasons to use Postgres. This is the vanilla stack, React on the front end, Laravel on the back end, Postgres for the database. If you have any doubt about what your stack should be, pick these. These will carry you through the MVP phase, through the baller phase, and they will be able to be worked with when you come to Lambo phase and you have to scale out. They can do that. But the big thing is that they are going to get you as far as you possibly can go before you have to worry about that. They are going to take you through multiple stages of the business without having to do an architecture overhaul, without having to spend the money and get a bunch of experts in and risk having customers churn when there's hiccups along the way. You don't want to have to go through an architecture overhaul. And this is the architecture, this is the stack that will let you go possibly as far as you ever need to go without having to change it. Okay, we'll finish by looking at the biggest mistake that I see people making when they come to this kind of decision. That big mistake is they buy into the hype about the new hot framework. They buy into Svelte is going to replace React and Vue and everything's going to be in Svelte. They buy into this new data layer is going to be the thing that replaces Active Record, and we're going to do ORM differently with databases forevermore. It's not true. Stick with the vanilla stuff because migrating is expensive. You want to prioritize what's dependable over what's exciting. Okay, that's the big lesson of picking your tech stack. So with that, I'll see you guys in the next video. Looking forward to it. Peace out.